In the summer of 1388, General Yi Sung-gae stood on the banks of the Omnok River in a torrential downpour, facing an impossible choice. His king had ordered him to cross the swollen river and attack the massive military might of Ming China. To follow the king's order was certain suicide for his men, but to turn back and defy it was high treason. This antique map highlights the northern border where Yi's army was stationed. Crossing the Omnok River meant attacking a vastly superior empire without supply lines. Pressing forward, his soldiers would drown or starve. Retreating meant marching back to the capital, directly defying the king. Up to this moment, Yi was the definition of a loyal soldier. Born in the northern province of Hamhing, he was a famous archery prodigy who had spent his life defending the borders. He spent years fighting off Japanese pirates in the south and pushing back rebel forces in the north, earning a reputation as the country's most capable commander. Recognizing that his battle-hardened army was the only real power in the country, Yi chose his men over his monarch. He turned his troops around and marched on his own capital. That single act of mutiny collapsed the 400-year-old Goryeo dynasty. The loyal provincial soldier took control of the government, exiled the ruling family, and became a revolutionary. Yi cemented his coup with a political purge. He and his allies dethroned the final kings of Goryeo by spreading a rumor that the royal heirs were actually the illegitimate sons of a Buddhist monk, effectively erasing their claim to rule. By 1392, at the age of 58, Yi Sung-gae officially ascended the throne as King Taejo. He had founded the Joseon dynasty, an empire that would endure for 5 centuries. This family tree reveals the structural flaw that would fracture his new kingdom. Like many powerful men of his era, Taejo maintained 2 households. His first wife, Queen Sinui, stayed in the northern provinces and raised the older sons who fought his wars. His second wife, Queen Sinduk, lived with him in the capital and raised his youngest children. Having to choose a successor to solidify his new dynasty, Taejo bypassed the adult sons who actually helped him conquer the country. Instead, influenced by his second wife, he named his youngest, teenage son as the crown prince. This alienated his 5th son, Yi Bongwon. Bongwon was highly educated, dangerously ambitious, and had literally bloodied his own hands assassinating rivals to put his father on the throne. By prioritizing his favored new family over the proven warriors who built his empire, Taejo laid the inevitable groundwork for a bloody civil war. 6 years later, in 1398, the tension finally snapped in an event known as the First Strife of Princes. Bongwon launched a sudden, brutal ambush in the capital. His private forces slaughtered his young half-brothers, including the teenage crown prince, and executed the top government ministers who had engineered Taejo's new state. Taejo, old and isolated in his palace, was entirely paralyzed. His most trusted advisors were dead, his beloved youngest sons were murdered, and his own army was now controlled by the son who had just butchered his family. Bangwon's spite extended far beyond the murders. After taking power, he ordered the extravagant tomb of his stepmother, Queen Sindok, to be completely dismantled. He used her ornate burial stones to build the foundation of this public bridge in the center of the capital, ensuring that everyday commoners would literally trample her memory for generations to come. The iron discipline Taejo instilled in his sons as elite warriors was now being turned inward. The same lethal efficiency they had used to conquer the nation for their father was ultimately weaponized to destroy his chosen legacy. Disgusted and broken, Taejo abdicated the throne. He left the capital and retreated to a self-imposed exile in his childhood home of Hamhing, deep in the northern mountains. His son, now ruling as King Taejong, desperately needed his father's public blessing to legitimize his violent seizure of power. He sent a constant stream of royal messengers up north, begging Taejo to return to the capital. Taejo responded to the requests by executing the envoys or locking them away in the mountains. This gave rise to the Korean idiom hamhing chasa, a phrase still used today to describe a messenger who leaves on an errand and simply never comes back. Eventually, a Buddhist monk managed to wear down the old king's resolve, and Taejo agreed to a meeting. As Bangwon stepped out to greet his father, Taejo's fury flared one last time. He drew his famous bow and fired a hunting arrow straight at his son's chest. Bangwon dove away, and the arrow buried itself deep into a wooden tent pillar. Staring at the missed shot, Taejo finally broke. He threw down his bow, accepting that his son's survival was the will of heaven, and surrendered his years of rage. Taejo died in 1408. Against the traditions of a joined royal burial, he was placed in a solitary tomb outside the capital, separated forever from the queens of his two warring households. He forged a dynasty that would shape the Korean peninsula until the 20th century, but he died an isolated, grieving father, learning too late that conquering an empire is far easier than surviving the family you build it for.